Hello and welcome everyone to the finale of the F2 2022 season, as we are all here eager and waiting to see if Carlin can defend the F2 Constructors Championship against Virtuosi. Carlin is leading the gap by 41 points, which means both Virtuosi drivers have to finish in the points and more than likely on the podium, as well as the Carlin drivers to finish their race outside of the points. It will be a tough battle between both teams as we are preparing for the final race of the weekend, but first a recap of the season from our commentators.
It's the finale here in Abu Dhabi as our F2 drivers are preparing for the final race of the season, with qualifying not far from now as we get ever so closer to finding out who takes away the Constructors' Championship. And with me is Crofty, Ted Kravitz and Will Buxton to go over how this season has unfolded.
Well, Alex, to start off the season, we were in Bahrain. The format was qualifying, sprint and feature race, as it seemed like the new driver on the block was going to win big at the start. But when it came to the end of the feature race, Johnson suffered a rear puncture as he crossed the finish line outside of the points.
Next time around was Jeddah, as we followed F1. Still the same format, and it seemed like some drivers had a better time. But with the current format at the time, some drivers ended up short for the feature race, especially Johnson again, who had a tragic start, as his tyres were too worn out and ready to blow.
Drivers were no strangers to the third track on the calendar. With raising concern about the tyre compounds, Johnson yet again suffered a race start with blown tyres, with raised concern across the paddock to get the FIA to change the weekend format. That concern did actually get brought forward to the FIA, and by the time the next race came around, all teams were very happy about the outcome, as there was now only the main race on Sunday and no change to tyre allocation, with Lawson winning that time around.
The fifth round on the calendar for F2 was that of Monaco, a challenging track known to drivers and fans alike. And this is where Johnson was able to show his true strength under the updated weekend format, thus begun the chase for championship contention that has been formed throughout the season.
The next time around, we headed to Baku, a street circuit that has one of the longest straights on the calendar for F2 and F1. And with a very interesting fight throughout the grid, Johnson ends up getting his first mechanical failure of the season. We then go to the heart of European racing in Silverstone, where Lawson wins another race, but Virtuosi scores valuable points to catch up in Constructors.
After a strong team finish for Virtuosi, Johnson answers again with a P2 finish in Austria, as he's still tailing behind Lawson in the championship. This was a great warm-up for the F2 crowd, as Johnson comes back in France and wins his first race of the F2 season.
After that win in France, Johnson and Virtuosi were feeling the momentum, which was able to get them a decent points finish in Hungary, as there were some trackside incidents drivers had to watch out for. F2 then went to Spa, which resulted in a DNF under a safety car for Johnson, which allowed Lawson to secure the Drivers' Championship. That did put a dent into the team's motivation, but there still was plenty of work to be done for the Constructors' title between Virtuosi and Carlin.
We then travel to the coast of the Netherlands, where drivers put up a great fight on a challenging track. Some smoke came to be from another driver, which caused Johnson to react, but still managed a decent finish alongside his teammate Marino Sato. And with Monza being the track last time around, F2 has seen Johnson win yet another race throughout the season, especially with the early DNF from Lawson, which gave Virtuosi the perfect opportunity to try and secure that Constructors' Championship title this weekend.
We are all ecstatic about how this season has progressed to this final racing weekend. My name is Alex Jacks, and we are diving right into F2 qualifying for the final race of the season here in Abu Dhabi.
Fantastic, you've got pole position.
As we wind down from the excitement of qualifying, here's a look at your top three. Johnson, Lawson, Frederick Vesti. The grid is set then, so that just leaves the race itself. Join us tomorrow, where we'll be live with all the action, and until then, goodbye. Welcome then to the United Arab Emirates. Our F2 drivers are on the grid and we're moments away from lights out for the start of the Formula 2 Abu Dhabi race. So the Yas Marina circuit offers 16 corners and a lap distance of around 3.2 miles. There are a few opportunities to pass with long straights and DRS zones in 2 places, turns 5 and 7. Plenty of close racing then, plenty of speed and plenty of excitement for the fans, no doubt. With that then, let's run through the grid order. Johnson lines up on pole position and Liam Lawson completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid we have Vesti, Armstrong, Felipe Drugovic, Sargent, Vips, Williams, Ewasa, Clement Novalak, Hauger, Deruvala, Jake Hughes, Ollie Caldwell, and Sato, Boschong, Cordial, and Tatiana Calderon. Fittipaldi, Verschoor, Pourchaire, and Roy Nissani completes the grid. And with preparations almost complete, let's head down to the track. Alongside me today, I'm delighted to welcome back to the commentary box the 2012 GP2 champion, Davide Valsecchi. There looks to be a challenging race ahead of the drivers today, Davide. With that in mind, what are you looking out for today?
Well, Alex, I want to see how the drivers at the back of the grid are going to roll up. They'll need to make an impact in the early stages, and they're probably hoping for a bit of luck at the start. We may see some bold maneuvers out there today.
The formation lap gets underway for this, the Formula 2 race, and every driver will be looking to settle in for the race ahead, making sure the car is ready for battle once the lights go out. We are almost ready to start the Formula 2 race as the cars take their positions on the grid, with the drivers and teams making their final preparations.
All right, so here we are lining up at the grid for the final race of the season, front row with our rival, and we need a miracle from our teammate in order to gain enough points for this championship title for the team. So it's gonna be Lawson, who has the drivers championship, but we need a team play here from Sato in order to get a constructor championship win, as we see the rest of the cars lining up on the grid here in Abu Dhabi. Pretty daylight here before the final race of F1. As our 5 red lights are coming on, you see Lawson, Vesti, Armstrong. 5 red lights are on, and we're off to a decent start, starting on the mediums, going to the softs later on. Vesti putting up a challenge against Lawson there as we get a pretty good launch, already 6/10 or so between myself and Vesti. Coming around the first corner, we had the outside line, and apparently Lawson had a bad start, and Vesti had a better one. So the loss of Williams, Novalak back there around the end of the top 10. We could see Sato still back in P17. He was being cautious coming through the first few corners, but we already have about a second gap between myself and Vesti. And I don't know where this pace is coming from, and I think it's just how I'm reacting, because the practice session didn't feel that, it felt a lot closer, like less than 2/10 was the difference in practice. But yeah, so coming around this fast chicane, or the chicane on the back straight, splitting the two long curved straights, as Boschong loses a lot of positions through that chicane. And maybe he had some damage, I'm not really sure. Sato's still back up in P17, as Vesti is holding off Lawson at the time. Sergeant P5, as we've already grown the gap to about 1.5, 1.6 now. As you can see, they're coming around the corner behind us. Going really wide on these last few corners here on these medium tires, still having to get heat, as we did automate the formation lap, but there's no worries. We're coming through the hotel section pretty calmly. As you can see, everyone's still filing in, still sitting about 1.5 seconds as the gap, as we're finally coming around that final corner to finish out the rest of our first lap. And it's a pretty steady one, so I see that we have a big gap. And lap 2 and on, we decided to take it a little bit easier. Lawson manages to pass Vesti between lap 2 and 5. and he's within that half second of us. So he's going to have DRS there on the DRS detection line, and we try to get our racing line as best as possible coming out. He's right there in our gearbox, 2/10 back, and Vesty's right in his gearbox. So it's about 2/10 between myself, Lawson, Vesty, and Armstrong consecutively. You see he's trying to make a move on the outside. We push him outside to there. We hold our line. You can see us coming through, braking late, trying to hold him out wide. As you can see, he tries to cross over on the left side. We keep that wide line and keep as much momentum going as possible to fight the DRS, since we don't have any ERS in the F2. So Vesty still staying in his toe pretty well. That's another about a half-second gap from Armstrong to Vesty. So our top 3 are fighting right now, and a little bit of a gap, and then the next 3 or 4 as Sargent and Armstrong are fighting for position there. As we're coming around these first few corners, we're a few laps to go before we come into our first pit stops. I want to try and stretch it out. End up coming in without Lawson coming in behind us, and he makes a move on the outside. We have the inside line, so we kind of concede that position for now. We're gonna make sure we keep our racing line really tight coming through these next few corners to start the next lap, in order to use DRS on Lawson and regain that position, as Vesty is right in our gearbox. We're still gonna follow in Lawson on lap 7. 2 laps later here in Sector 1, we're going to be 7/10 of a gap. I know Lawson was closer to us when he passed us back earlier on lap 4 or lap 5, but we're going to have that momentum, and we're going to close the gap as much as possible. We're coming up to the braking zone here, and we're going to brake late as much as possible to try to close that gap. You can see Lawson harvesting, or I think that's just the brake light, and they don't have any battery for F2. So I think that's just a brake light for F2. We get DRS once again, and we're a lot closer from before the chicane, so we're going to move that outside line, what Lawson was trying to do before. And we're going to cover him off. So 3/10 is the gap coming through that long left-hander. I kind of wish they didn't get rid of that last chicane here, moving through this left-hander. I kind of liked it. Takes that corner a lot slower, and makes these corners a lot easier to react to. But we're not going to be getting that chicane back like the one in Spain, as we're coming through the hotel section once again. 4/10 is the gap on Lawson, and we have yet to come into the pits. But later on lap 9, still holding that position about 4/10 or so, just under 5/10. We're going to be coming into the pits here as we're coming through the hotel section. Lawson, Vesty, Sargent, Armstrong, still a strong top 5, as the gap is growing between the top 3. So you can see Sargent 8/10 back behind Vesty, but Vesty's 2 seconds behind myself and Lawson. We're in a fight of our own, but we're both coming in off of our mediums onto new sets of softs, as Sargent stays out. So that way they don't double stop. But we have 4 cars behind us. You notice that I went slow into the pits before the pit limiter line, and I wanted to back him up as much as possible. And you can see actually here, when we come down, we're actually blocked by traffic. That was I had a good release, but we were blocked by traffic by some of the other drivers that were coming in. And we're still going to be coming out ahead of Lawson and all the other drivers. We try to get him pushed back and maybe have another driver get between myself and him. But that's not the case. Poor Chair, P11 ahead of us, 1.5 seconds or so. He's came out just ahead of us. 1.5 was between him and Beauchamp. 14.8 seconds is the gap between the first pit stoppers and the second pit stoppers. So everybody on the bottom half most likely took their pit stop. I don't quite remember who did and didn't. The top 10 and top 11 took theirs. So we're coming around the end of lap 10 to see where all of our other drivers come out. Sato is in the pits. He's actually coming into his pit box, and he's coming out of it right there on the left screen behind the stats. You can see him there, as Lawson just passed him momentarily, trying to watch the names on the left side. As Lawson 1.2, so we kind of increased the gap that he had on us when we went into the pits. He's about a half second back, and you can see he's already starting to lose it as we're coming through those corners really roughly as we go to our commentators.
This has definitely been a race to watch, as Johnson currently leads against Lawson, with less than a second separating them both. As of right now, with where the Virtuosi drivers are placed on the grid, they will not be able to claim the Constructors' Championship.
That's right, Marino Sato is in the backfield providing no assistance to Johnson for points. At this rate, Sato needs a miracle in order to pick up as many places, such as a possible safety car, and he stays out. But with how all the cars are running, it seems unlikely.
I do have to say that Virtuosi has definitely improved over the course of the season. Johnson, coming a long way from winning the F3 championship last season in 2021, he will most likely be looking for a championship title as he is staying with the team for the 2023 season. There still is no word yet if Johnson has outperformed Sato well enough in order for talks of being a reserve driver for Alpine. But only time will tell.
Well, there definitely is a lot of moving parts for F2 this off-season. Seeing that Lawson and several other drivers that won't be on the grid for F2 gives Johnson an even bigger opportunity at that title, with less experienced drivers taking up those seats. I wouldn't be surprised if he's shooting for the F2 title, then trying to jump to F1 in 2024.
Well, that opportunity will have to wait, as we're yet to finish the last race of the F2 season, as Johnson still leads against Lawson, with 2 race wins on the season being France and last time around in Monza. Johnson is looking to make it a 3rd race win, not the record he wanted for the season compared to F3. This would be a great motivational start to next season if he wins today here in Abu Dhabi.
And we are really hoping for that win today, as we're still running pretty good against Lawson, lap 12. Lawson, 6/10 is the gap. He's closing in, coming through that maze rate. He has a DRS, so he's going to try to close in. We move to the outside line. It seems to be a better line for us if we go outside early, and we keep him behind us. So he's about 7/10 still. Armstrong now up into P3 against Vesti, Dragovic, Sargent. Dragovic and Armstrong were running pretty good. I don't quite remember where Dragovic was, but they're still going to be fighting in the top 5 as we're coming around the last few corners. This is the end of no, it's going to be start of the final lap, as you see Lawson is still behind us. You can see the gap between P2 and P3 has greatly increased. As you can see, Sargent in the blue, other Carlin way there in the back as we're fighting to defend. We're going to be coming through the chicane. He's going to have DRS once again, and we need to get our racing line as accurate as possible. Coming over that detection line, you can see us trying to stick to the inside line, try to go as far as we can. Move to the outside. He doesn't have DRS there, I don't believe. It doesn't look like it, but I know he was pretty close. As we're finally coming around this long left-hander. Once again, wish that chicane was still there. Kind of helps, especially with the unsettling curb. We get a warning for that curb, and I'm just glad it wasn't a 3-second time penalty, especially here on the final lap. Lawson trying to close in as we're coming through the hotel section. This double left-hander trying to put a foot down as best as possible. Back end slipping out just a little bit. Lawson still trying to close in. That's going to be win number 3 of the season. Not a driver or constructor for myself or the team, but that's going to be great confidence coming into the team for next season.
Guys, thank you so much. You've been great all weekend. To everyone back in the factory, on the pit wall, you've been amazing.
Yes, mate, that's it. The season's over, and what a season it's been. Really great effort from you. The whole team is really proud of you, so thank you for a fantastic effort. See you back in the pit lane.
And Virtuosi have pulled off a great victory here today. So, Davide, how exactly did they set themselves apart from the pack today?
It was down to one thing: consistent pace over everyone else out there on the track. We could spend a great deal of time talking about race and tire strategy, what has occurred on the track, but at the end of the day, the difference here was down to simply being faster on track than everyone else. Amazing skill on show.
Another race and another victory for Virtuosi as we see the drivers make their way out to the podium for the final ceremony. Superb racing out there today and a well-deserved win. After this round of the World Championship, here's how things look in the drivers' table. It was not the best weekend for our championship leader, and their advantage at the top has been reduced. And now, Davide Valsecchi, let me ask you, who is your driver of the day?
I have to give it to Johnson.
On to the teams then. So then, Carlin have done it. This result seals their victory, and they are team champions at last. That's the end of today's race. Thank you for joining us, and I'm sure you'll agree it was a great race and sets us up nicely for the next installment in a few weeks' time. Take care. From Davide and I, it's goodbye.